Welcome to Monday through Friday Cellular Agriculture for a Pandemic-Free Future. My name is George Ortega. This is episode number 57. I'm recording it on Wednesday, September 23rd at 3:18 p.m. Eastern Time. And I'm going to again try to spin it positively, rather than just like reminding you that, if we don't end factory farming, we're in for a lot of trouble. I want to take the other approach, just like that if we end factory farming, by doing that, by taking on that initiative, we'll have created a much better world that extends far beyond being free of future pandemics. All right, I got to start with a caveat. So this optimism assumes that Biden is going to win. If Trump wins, if enough of you, don't care enough about it, I understand the abortion issue is important to you, but hey, the Republicans have 6 out of 9 Supreme Court seats now, or they will as soon as this, next person gets confirmed. So no excuses. You don't need a Republican president to end abortion if that's what the Republican Party really wants. Okay, but this, again, if you vote Trump into power again, then we deserve what's coming, and so we'll descend into this kind of a slow hell, and we'll pay the price. All right. So, but again, assuming that we are wise enough, virtuous enough, and again, I don't agree with abortion. I think that ending abortion, I think, will probably make the world much, much better, at least in the United States. But we're dealing with this pandemic now, and so again, the abortion is a Supreme Court thing, So basically, all right, I want you to imagine the kind of cooperation, bipartisan. Republicans have to buy into this. Back up. Basically, before this cooperation happens, imagine, I don't know, April, May, June of next year, and imagine we're still wearing masks because it's very likely it's, doesn't seem like, for example, Israel just went into a second lockdown. Some of the European countries are experiencing these upsurges in cases again, and I think Spain just locked down Madrid again after having opened it up. So yeah, imagine this going through the holidays. People not being able to get together as they tend to for the second year, and imagine how people will be feeling in the spring of 2021. So that sets the backdrop to this optimism. And it's just not the population. Imagine how businesses are going to feel, because they're, the market could tank before then. They say that the fundamentals are, some people say the fundamentals are sound, but that's hard to kind of believe, considering that, major industries like tourism and restaurants are still, in crisis. There's a Sam Ash here in White Plains, a huge store, doing great apparently for over 10 years. Now they're 2/3 as large now. There's a for rent sign on one of them. So basically imagine that business has had enough also. It's not just we who are locked down, people who are, losing loved ones, are just going insane with this distancing, getting depressed, getting anxious, So now, by spring of 2021, then imagine people, and let's say we're beginning to come out of it, or even if we don't come out of it, like extend your imagination to next fall or the spring of 2022, if that's where we are. And then that's much easier to imagine, because basically what I'm saying is there's going to come a time when we will be, God willing, back to this new normal. We won't be wearing masks anymore. And after all that we have endured, after all that businesses have endured, after so much havoc, our kids not being able to get educated, the kids' parents not able to go to work because there's not enough childcare. And I just want to back up. If Trump gets elected, expect a year or 2 or 3 more of this, because he still hasn't, mandated. There's still not enough masks because he hasn't mandated that factories make them. There's still not enough testing because, again, he's been ignoring this. So you want this to extend beyond a year or 2, or perhaps 3. Yeah, elect him. So all right, but again, like taking an optimistic approach, whether it's in the spring or next fall, we're going to be coming out. And this, this is a no-brainer. I mean, like, people are going to be saying, well, what are you doing? They're going to be telling, and maybe, they're not doing it now because everybody's so immersed in this, they can't think of the future. They're too into the present. But eventually people are going to say to the politicians, what are you doing to protect us? And God willing, because of this program, this series, and perhaps other, initiatives, people will understand that, that there are only 2 solutions. One is to end the farming of animals, especially the factory farming, and that has to be all over the world. And the other is a universal vaccine for all strains of the different kinds of viruses. We basically attack a part of the virus that doesn't mutate, it doesn't change, stays stable through generation. The problem with that is that's probably 10, 20, 30 years away. And cellular agriculture is much, much easier to do technologically. It's an easier research challenge. So people, again, whether it's next spring or next fall, people begin to think, well, if I'm going to start a new business, or I'm going to open up my business again, I don't want this to happen again. I don't want to go bankrupt. I don't want to just pump in tens of thousands of dollars into a business to just have it evaporate with the next pandemic. And people are going to be thinking, I don't want to live in fear of another pandemic. Because again, as we're opening up, the epidemiologists, the research experts, the infectious disease experts are going to be reminding us, hey, again, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when the next one strikes. And I've shown you the table, numerous times where we have experienced more epidemics in the first 10 years of this new millennium, the 2000s, than in the first 1,000 years of this, common era. As a matter of fact, not only have we experienced more, we've experienced 6 times more epidemics in 10 years than in 1,000 years. We've experienced about, in the last 100 years, 1900s, there were about 40 epidemics. The first 10 years of the 2000s, well, there have been 42, there were 42. And the only reason we're not meeting that number this decade is because, this year we haven't had as many epidemics as we would have because we're distancing. So again, people are going to understand that this isn't a matter of kindness. This isn't a matter of, oh, we're going to be kind to these animals. We're not going to be cruel. We're going to understand that they're sentient beings. This is a matter of self-preservation. I mean, we live in fear, or the possibility of another pandemic that may be 10 times worse, or we do the right thing, again, not out of kindness, not out of morality, but out of self-preservation. That is the optimistic message. So now, all right, so Imagine that. So like, imagine that that's the consensus of the leaders, not just in this, well, initially the people, then the leaders of this country and every country of the world, because I mean, it's the same science, you know, they're looking at the same data, you know, and people are going to understand the containment, you know, efforts are not an effective strategy for this. Because again, you know, some pandemics could be much, much more lethal, much, much more contagious. So with all that in mind, imagine the cooperation. Basically, you know, the entire world, this is going to be the most ambitious global initiative, collective global initiative ever. You know, it's going to unite the world against a common foe. You know, this coronavirus or you know, in this case, future viruses, future pandemics. And that's going to change the political dynamic. That's going to get people thinking, well, you know, if we can do this as a world, what else can't we do as a world? You know, maybe we can finally tackle climate change as a world. Maybe we can like have less nuclear weapons. I mean, part of this initiative, it's not even a maybe, it's like, in order to get this done, we're going to have to like assist the poor countries in Africa, especially, and some in South America and parts of Asia that aren't rich enough to transition from farming of animals to cellular agriculture. So we're going to have to help them out, you know, and that's going to be wonderful because basically that will be a way to build up their economies, to help them lift themselves out of poverty. You know, we should have done this decades ago, but you know, finally we're doing it now. So imagine the hopefulness, and again, like bringing this back to Trump, I mean, imagine the sense of relief people will feel where we don't have this really evil, you know, child governing us, you know, corrupting people, because that's what he does. He's corrupted, you know, almost half of the country. I mean, and I, you know, I can't say that completely because some of those people genuinely care about abortion, and you know, I mean, we abort as many lives each year as die of every other cause combined. You can't minimize that aspect of this. Even in Jewish law, you know, basically like, you're not only allowed, you're obligated to break any law that you need to break in order to save a life. So for people who consider, like me actually, but I'm not going to vote for Trump because I just don't believe him. And for people who consider this, you know, unborn children lives, then yes, this is that serious. And maybe, yes, maybe with the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade, that will disempower the Republican Party. Because you got to understand, in politics, you know, with the environment, look at how many environmental regulations Trump has reversed. He won't even allow his agencies to write or say the term climate change. The guy is just evil. You know, he's just evil. So like, what happens is like, so yeah, you know, we get this new Supreme Court justice. They overturn Roe v. Wade. Abortion is no longer legal. And guess what? All those people whose only reason for voting Republican was the abortion issue suddenly don't have a reason to vote Republican anymore. You know, they could care less about the gay rights. They could care less about the immigrants. I mean, because that's the truth. I mean, like, these are like minor issues. You know, people don't really care about them. Or, you know, said a different way, people care much more about their livelihoods, their health, their lives, their businesses than they care about gays and immigrants. You know, that's the reality. So again, put that together. So like, you know, so I guess, you know, and this is all coming together. So I guess this ending of abortion is just part of this. You know, we can go really grand in this, that this is like God, you know, saying, all right, it's time for you to reform, and here's how you're going to reform. You're going to stop, you know, killing the unborn. You're going to like end global poverty. You're going to stop abusing animals, stop torturing animals. And by that, you're going to create a much, much better world, more harmonious world for everyone. That's the world we're headed toward. And I say that with a lot of confidence because to not be headed in that direction is to be headed in the opposite direction. Again, If we don't end factory farming, we will experience another pandemic. And who knows? And you know, again, that table, the epidemics are getting more and more prevalent, you know, more and more frequent, and it's just a matter of time before, like, for example, there's some viruses that are, let's say, 40 times more lethal than this coronavirus. But what happens with some of those viruses is, like, they only, and you know, this is in the past, I guess they're still around, but they only are contagious with people who are sick, who are showing symptoms, coughing, sneezing, all that stuff. Now imagine that virus mutates with a virus like the coronavirus or the coronavirus, you know, because this is quite possible that basically a lethal virus mutates with a virus that, an extremely lethal, you know, 40 times more lethal than coronavirus, mutates with this coronavirus that can spread without symptoms, you know, and we're not talking about millions of deaths, we're talking about tens of millions, perhaps hundreds of millions, you know, and talk about an economic meltdown. So that is what our future holds in store. Now, all right, now let's go back to, like, you know, people will think, oh, this is such a major effort, you know, like, this is going to cost so much. No. Again, I'm not going to show it today because I don't want to, like, take the time to draw up. But basically, I just pulled up a few articles, the New York Times, Washington Post, in addition to the Forbes article that I've been referring to, saying that we've already spent $6 trillion on this pandemic, and that was as of April. No, as of June, early June. But you know, in June and July, we had upsurges everywhere, and now, like, you know, the Midwest, you know, these states that are very Republican, where people don't trust science, they're experiencing upsurges. So, like, it's very reasonable to expect that the Congressional Budget Office's April assessment that we would be spending $8 trillion on this when all is said and done is too conservative. You know, we may be spending 10. I saw a figure of 16 trillion. That is, I don't know that, but anyway, the idea is that all we need to do, you know, $50 billion, you know, basically the cellular agriculture industry has about $1.5 billion invested in it now. But if it were to get that infusion of $50 billion next year, next spring, you know, then yes, it is very reasonable to expect that we could have these products in supermarkets throughout the world in a couple of years, 3 years. And imagine, again, like, just imagine what will have happened, you know, to make that happen. The kind of cooperation, the economic cooperation, the cooperation between governments, cooperation between people, the scientists just, like, solving these problems, and, you know, all of a sudden everybody getting optimistic. If we can do this, we can tackle climate change. So the optimism that would surface and spread throughout the world would be unprecedented. You know, this is like, you know, we've got this enemy that seems to be just, like, you know, climate change, you know, spelling our doom. All of a sudden, you know, after decades of inaction, people say, oh my God, we can do this because we have successfully addressed this coronavirus. And we've got the infrastructure, we've got the will, we've got the resources. So I think I'm doing a better job today. And I got to continue with this positive tone, because I mean, like, I realize that, you know, everybody's, like, suffering a lot. But, you know, you got to, you know, I don't apologize for these last, you know, 50 shows where most of them I'm just, like, presenting the facts, you know, both from a religious and scientific perspective. I mean, we're doing real evil, and we are placing our futures monumentally at risk. I mean, that's the reality. To not know that, it's to not understand what we're going through and not really get it. So, but again, you know, shifting from that warning to this message of hope and optimism, I think is what we need. I think we need that. So I'm going to continue to, I'll try to dig up more encouraging, maybe people are saying this already. I haven't seen it yet, but ideally it would be initially articles written on this, and then people coming out with books, how this pandemic will turn our world around and allow us to combat climate change and just like improve our lives in so many ways. I would hope that people are working on that, because like otherwise they're working on, the opposite, how this pandemic is going to bring us back to the Stone Age. How like, I hope you're enjoying civilization now, because it's not going to last for long. So, all right. So what else? Well, we've got about 7 minutes, so I've covered it, but it's all right. No, let's get through a bit more of what needs to happen for this to happen. For decades, for over a century, really, since this country has was created, 1776, it's basically money that has governed us. We have not been a democracy, and whether we call ourselves a republic or a democratic republic or whatever, the fact remains that especially today, much more so today than in the 50s and in the 40s, money rules politics. Why? Because the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court that hopefully will regain their conscience and end abortion. The Supreme Court, Citizens United, other decisions, basically allows as much money in politics as people want to pump into politics. Rich people, rich corporations. So that means that our politicians are not doing your will. They're basically, and this is across the board, these politicians are not very good people, because like, just like Trump, if they're more concerned with their being reelected than with fulfilling the will of the people, fighting climate change, getting this money out of politics, they're not really on your side, however much they might pretend. So how do you get them on your side? Well, this Biden, the Democrats, let's see if the Democrats really come through, because like for decades I've been completely disappointed with them. I thought Clinton was going to change things. I'm sorry that he didn't. I thought Obama would. He didn't. Let's see what Biden does. But the other part of this, the other major thing we need to do to make this happen, is to finally get money out of politics. That zero. In other words, like you're a super rich corporation. I'm sorry, you can't donate anything to politics. This is called federally financed elections, publicly financed elections. Basically, instead of like the rich giving to politicians in exchange for favors, in exchange for the politicians doing their will, you want to run for office, get enough signatures to be on the ballot. And even the signatures, because like, some people would pay, organizations to get these signatures. We'll have to figure that out where that's not even allowed, where it's got to be like, the will of the people. So people get on the ballot, and each candidate, I mean, like it's obscene, the hundreds of millions of dollars that get spent on these campaigns get wasted really. So, each let's say campaign is given, I don't know, $50, $100 million for the entire campaign, and they've got to, get their message out. Maybe we'll force the broadcasters, the networks, to give them to not make money on politics. So like right now, the broadcasters, when these politicians present their ads, the broadcasters are making money. I don't think that's right. So basically, the other part of this, and because another cause for great optimism, because, to my reasoning, we have to get money out of politics in order to do this, to fight this coronavirus. We will, again, and even the corporations will probably be on our side with this after, another year or two of this. And so without money in politics, the door is open to a much, much, much better world across the board. I've been like, for decades, I've been like championing, for example, the the teaching of happiness and morality in schools. Fine that people, kids need to learn how to read and write, but, our lives are most fundamentally about happiness. Teach them how to be happy. Teach them how to be good people, and you can do that because they have to learn how to read anyhow. So like teach them how to read, with material that teaches them how to be happy and virtuous. Another initiative I think would make this world much, much better. Right now, 80% of Congress is men. 80% of politics in the United States is men. Now let's, men and women are different in certain ways. Just as, a family where like the man, whatever the man says goes, that's the way they operate. Just how that's dysfunctional. That's not really the best way to do it. Our government really doesn't work well with being dominated with so many men. So another thing we can do is like 50-50 gender balance, across the board. You have, for example, 2 senators in each state. One of them must be a woman, one must be a man. You have 50 representatives, House of Representatives in a certain state. You've got 25 men, 25 women across the board, local, state, regional, national. All right. Again, so now you could see, from all this, how this, this pandemic, yes, we're suffering a lot, but it really could be a blessing in disguise, especially by preparing us to effectively address climate change. All right, so we've got about 1.5 minutes to go, and so I'm gonna wind this down slowly. Again, catch this every Monday through Friday. I thought I was going to change this series to something else, but I'm staying with it. Episode number 58, I guess, will be tomorrow. Catch this every Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock on White Plains Community Media. And if you missed the episode, check out YouTube. They're all on YouTube. And if you'd rather just listen to this rather than there's really not much to see. I mean, just like if you've got an iPhone, go to iTunes and download the podcast, again, CELAG for a Pandemic-Free Future. Or if you've got an Android or a PC and you've got Spotify, all the episodes are as a podcast on Spotify also and other platforms. There's about another 6 to a dozen other platforms that the series is on. So, all right. Well, I hope I have succeeded. I definitely did succeed more than I have been in presenting a positive, spin on this, an optimistic outlook. And I'm going to continue with this because this is what we need. All right. Thanks for watching, and God willing, I will see you again tomorrow.